gardeners of old did not purchase new vegetable seeds each year to start their vegetable gardens. Instead, they collected and saved seed from one year to the next. Now, in the next month, we can expect a killing frost to come in and take our tender annual vegetable crops. So in the meantime, we can identify a few fruits that we can collect for saving the seeds for next year's crop. And when we do this, we want to keep a couple of things in mind. The first thing we want to think about is pollination. Some of our crops, like the tomatoes, our peas and beans and peppers, are what we call self-pollinated. And that means that the pollen from the flower on a single plant will be used to pollinate that same flower. So we're getting the pollen source and the ovule from the same parent plant. A lot of times these flowers are a bit closed up, and that keeps outside pollen from coming in to pollinate that flower. Now when that happens, we could be sure that the seed that comes from that cross will produce a plant with the same characteristics as the parent plant. Now there's other crops that are cross-pollinated, and that requires either insects or wind to carry the pollen from one plant to another. And when that happens, we're not getting the seed and the plants that come from that cross are not going to be identical from the parent plant. Now they can be if we ensure that the pollen and the ovule come from the same variety, but in a garden setting, if we have a lot of different cultivars, that can be rather difficult. So oftentimes we avoid cross-pollinated plants if we're collecting seed. The last thing we want to consider is hybrid crops versus plants that are open pollinated. Now a plant that is open pollinated, the pollen can freely come in and fertilize those flowers. But a hybrid cross is a very specific cross, and this is something that's a little bit more manipulated or man-done. We'll have the pollen from one parent and the ovule from another parent, and these are brought together to create what's called a hybrid crop. And this is done to increase the vigor, to combine really good traits from two different crop lineages into one superior plant. Many of our commercial crops are hybrids, and also many of the crops that are available for gardens are also hybrids. When we take the seed from those hybrids and plant it out, what we're going to get is a whole new combination of the genes that came from the two parent plants. And that includes the good genes and the bad genes. And so we're not going to end up with a fruit that is identical to that of the parent. So we want to avoid hybrids when we're collecting seed. And you'll know a hybrid when you're purchasing your crops either at the garden center or from a catalog. It'll be listed right on the label that it is a hybrid. So instead we want to stick with our open pollinated crops. Many of our heirloom cultivars are open pollinated, as well as some newer selections. Well, today I'm going to collect some of our peppers and harvest those seeds for storage. I've collected several different types of pepper to save the seeds from. We have a sweet banana pepper, some little Thai chilies, and some jalapenos. Now when you're collecting fruit, you want to start with healthy plants and healthy fruits as well. Avoid any pods that have signs of disease on them, and also look at the plant and make sure you're not harvesting fruit from plants with disease, because some diseases, particularly viruses, can be passed down to the next generation through the seed. So we want to stay healthy as we're doing this. We're going to cut these open and extract the seeds, but before they do that, you can see I'm wearing some gloves, and it's important to remember that peppers are rather powerful plants. The chemical that they produce that gives them that bite is called capsaicin, and it could be an irritant to our skin and our sinuses and our eyes. So even if, as you're working, even if you have gloves, make sure you're not touching your face, and wash your hands thoroughly when you finish. So we want to cut these open, and I'm going to go ahead and cut right through. And then scrape the seeds out onto a paper towel. That capsaicin is at its greatest concentration in the little film protecting these seeds. So this is where you want to make sure you are wearing gloves. Even a dried pepper, like if you're cooking with it, you want to wear some gloves so that you can avoid getting that on your body. Okay, carefully scrape the seeds out, and when you're working with several different peppers like I am, it's a good idea to label what plant they came from, because the seeds all look the same. It could be pretty easy to get them mixed up. I'm going to remove these from the stem inside as well. At this stage, if you see any that are obviously darker or dry, or they look somehow diseased, we want to remove those. So I'm going to go ahead and label this as sweet banana. Another way we can dry these is in little cups, and I prefer the cup method, and the reason for that is that when you're drying these, it's a nice idea to swivel them, turn them around and flip the seeds, and when they're in a cup you could just shake them around and flip them over. This is a real spicy one. If you're working with a lot of seeds, you can also wear protection for your respiratory. You can wear a mask to protect your respiratory system, because just inhaling too much capsaicin can really irritate you. So again, if you put them in a cup, you're going to want to label your cup, and we're going to put these in a dry place out of direct sunlight. A kitchen shelf is a nice place. You want them to be somewhere visible, because you want to come to them every couple days and move them around, flip them over. That way both sides of the seed are exposed to the air, and it's going to dry evenly. It'll take them about 2 to 3 weeks to dry. And right now when they're wet, if you press on one, they dent and they bend. And you can kind of see that. It's hard to pick up on such a small seed, but they're going to bend easily. When they're fully dry, they're going to be brittle, and if you press on them, they're not going to dent. So you'll know that they're fully dry. At that point, we want to package them up into envelopes, and make sure you put each different type of seed into its own envelope, and then you could put all the envelopes together into a airtight glass jar. Put a spoonful of rice, or if you have silica gel, in the bottom of that jar, and that'll absorb any moisture that gets in there. And then store that in the refrigerator. It's a great place to save seeds until next season when we can plant them out in our garden.